Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome President and CEO Travelport, Gordon Wilson, in discussion with Skift Travel Tech Editor Sean O'Neill.
So a friendly reminder to everyone, please ask your questions through the Slido app or slido.com. I ran a little short of time last time, and I'll try to make a better effort. We are very pleased today, as we said, to have the three most powerful travel technology companies in the world. And one of those is Travelport. And the CEO, Gordon Wilson, thank you very much for coming over today.
My pleasure.
I asked Decius about his picks for the World Cup. What's your pick?
Well, not you know from my accent, but I'm Scottish by birth, and it's in our DNA. We're not allowed to support England. Although I'm tempted because if England does win, then we'll never have to hear about 1966, which was the last time they won ever again. So I'm tempted to support England just to shut them up.
Understood. So one of the ways that Travelport stands apart from its rivals, Amadeus and Sabre, is payments. You made a big bet as a CEO on payments when you guys took a majority stake in eNett. Mm-hmm. It's one of your fastest growing units. So why are you excited about eNett?
eNet's sweet spot is that it's doing B2B payments, particularly cross-border international. So we're now working with 8 of the 10 biggest OTAs in the world and doing their B2B payments, addressing issues related to foreign exchange, one-to-one matching of bookings, taking out issues of fraud and improving reconciliation. So we're excited about it because it grew in the last quarter alone by 80% year over year in revenue terms, and we're addressing a massive TAM, total addressable market. So you know the world is our oyster basically with eNett. It's solving a problem that the industry's had for years in terms of how a travel agency, whether it's a Booking.com or whatever, can sort of make payments to suppliers in a cost-effective, streamlined way. You know, it's running on full power at the moment. Well,
fintech is very hot. Tomorrow, Adyen in Europe will have an IPO. What do you think in terms of tech investment for this crowd that you're going to do with eNett going ahead in the future?
Well, I think first of all, you know, just grow it like we have been, but also we are addressing more and more product requirements because we're increasingly becoming, if you like, treasury and payments consultants to our customer base. Because our purpose in life as a company is to provide technology to make the process of managing and buying travel better. Buying travel includes paying for travel. Now, we're not going to go into the consumer payments world because that's pretty overcrowded with Apple Pay and Google Wallet and others out there. But in the B2B payments world, there aren't that many people in it, in all honesty, and we believe now we're kind of number one in international cross-border payments. It's very complicated, and we're adding real value to the bottom line of our customers, and we're progressively adding more and more services, whether that's currency, whether it's operating merchant services on behalf of our travel agency customers, whether it's actually enabling them to accept more consumer forms of payment, which the hotels can't accept, but we can interject an eNett VAN, virtual account number, so the hotel can accept it because we use the MasterCard acceptance network.
So to give you an example, account numbers and sort of it gets past the old days of faxing or some of the more cumbersome ways.
The ways that people were doing it was either wire transfer of money, which means you're an unsecured creditor, so somebody goes pop and you've lost all your money, and talk to travel agencies who booked low-cost airlines, making cash payments to them who went belly up, Air Berlin, Monarch Airlines, etc. Or they were using their own lodge cards, their own credit cards to make bookings. That gives you protection of the card scheme, but you're giving out a 2-year credit card effectively with a 2-year validity window and your CVV number that, to thousands of people around the world who can commit fraud on you.
Okay. So this helps tamp down on fraud. It gives much more rapid speed, very good for accountability. You've mentioned before that eNett, one of the possibilities for it is to spin it out at some point. Is that still a possibility?
Yes, everything's a possibility. It's not lost on me that fintech is a hot sector and valuations in fintech are higher than valuations in travel distribution and travel technology. But we're in this sweet spot at the moment whereby we're growing really fast, we're doing really well. There's no compunction on us to sell it, but it's an option we have as a business.
Okay. I'm wondering about we're here in Silicon Valley. LinkedIn is a huge aggregator of demand of professionals. It could become a big seller of business travel if suppliers connected directly to it. But airlines need to do a lot of work on their back end, clearing up some of their legacy methods of doing accounting and back end stuff. How long do you think it'll take until the LinkedIns and Alibabas of the world will be plugging into travel and being able to sell it?
Oh, I think it's happening now. I mean, we're already doing work because we've been investing a lot in kind of next generation APIs as a company. We call them trip services, which are lighter weight, lower payload, faster, which we need for the mobile economy, where we think we're a market leader in terms of what we're doing there. But that all lends itself to sort of new entrants into the travel space, because through plugging into those kind of APIs, anybody, whether it's Alibaba or it's Amazon or it's Facebook or it's Instagram, whatever, can access all the rich content and capabilities that we can provide. So we've got proof of concepts up and running with Instagram, you name it, we're working with them because they are sources of consumer transactions for us to process.
Okay. So one of the ways Travelport has stood out from its competitors, Sabre and Amadeus, is that you've made two efforts. You have a rich content and branding effort where you've worked with airlines to try to help with upselling and putting on the travel agents' reservations desktop very clear branding. Another part of it is, as we mentioned earlier, there's the new distribution capability where airlines have gotten together to come up with new messaging, and Travelport has been it has been the fastest to sort of get certification in many key parts of that.
The fastest.
So how much actual rich content in both of those methods is actually being booked by travel agents as a percentage of all of the content coming through?
The answer is loads. I mean, Sean, just to be clear though, we don't just put this content into travel agency desktops. Okay. We also put it into our OTA customers.
Like so Expedia, Make My Trip, and others?
All of these guys, and people like Concur, okay, in the business travel space. So we now have 263 airlines fully implemented, and this means they can show all of their fares families, as they're called, so the product steps you go up, all of their ancillaries, and they can also make tailored offers to personalization, at least to corporate level. So that if a particular corporation has a special deal whereby if their people are traveling, they get lounge access or whatever else the airline wants to do, all of that can be done through our system. 260 airlines, 63 airlines account for 70% of all of our transactions for airlines, which now use this capability. We've put it into our cloud. We use a hybrid cloud, so we use our own data center with Microsoft Azure, to take us to the edge of the network. So all the rich content branding is at the edge of the network. And increasingly now we're providing it actually as a capability whereby we're pushing it out so that people can run it inside their own data centers. So it takes out latency altogether.
Are agents actually booking it? How much of the volume of rich content is being booked by agents?
Yes, I mean, the average fare that we generate through our system for most airlines is at least 2x their average network fare. 2x. Okay. So when we talk about value that we create, for airlines and for all the nonsense that goes on in the industry, the value creation that Travelport brings by being able to sell, upsell, add sell, to them is considerable, because I think, as we all know, when you buy a seat assignment or whatever, it's mainly profit dropping to the airline's, bottom line. So as a cost of sale and a capability, to sort of display your full range of wares, full shelves, if you like, of product, we are second to none in this space.
So American Airlines last summer launched this Direct Connect offer. They're offering to pay $2 per segment to agencies that sort of connect directly, or they will partner with Amadeus, Sabre, and Travelport if they want to sort of go by their terms of how things should be done. What do you think of this effort?
Well, is it having any traction?
They say it's having traction.
Well, I can't figure where.
Okay. Why are you skeptical?
Well, because what does it do? What is it the airlines are doing that they can't do through the technology that we've invested in and deployed? It's purely a commercial model at this point in time. Now, don't get me wrong. I think the big dynamic that airlines are getting to is much more dynamic pricing, because traditionally airlines price their inventory according to fares buckets. The kind of things that Decius and his company provide to them is kind of inventory management on fares buckets. What airlines want is to dynamically price. So they want to offer a price at a given point on a given day. Low-cost airlines already do that. So EasyJet doesn't have inventory buckets. EasyJet is the prix du jour. And that's the big change that is happening, which is why a driver for why the airlines want to connect through APIs. But most of the airlines we're talking to want to connect those APIs through our platform, because our platform doesn't just aggregate the content, it provides the workflow management, the system process that virtually every large travel agency, certainly in the corporate travel agency space, relies on as their SAP, if you like, of how they run their business. And that's a point that's often missed or not understood in the industry.
Well, airlines will say that some of the mid-office and back-office systems that travel agencies have were systems that are kind of slow, that's sort of like their choke points in the system, and that Travelport, Amadeus, and Sabre have either sold them those systems historically, or they have certain requirements for interoperability that sort of handcuff to them. The agencies don't really have the money to sort of invest in upgrading that tech. What responsibility do you feel to trying to help agencies sort of get the end-to-end?
Oh, a huge amount. And that's why, again, another part of our key investment is what we've done in robotics. So we've just launched, and it goes out in full production in Q3, a robotics tool which is based off an eventing engine, which again we've built in the Microsoft Azure cloud, which will trigger an event and cause initially 7 robotic applications to kick in on behalf of the agency to enable them to do customer servicing without actually having human beings doing it. Because if you think about it, when we all travel as corporate travelers and we want to change our itinerary, we ask 3 questions. 1, can I? And the answer may be no, in which case it's a short dialogue because you've got a restricted ticket. If the answer is yes, you can change it, the next question is how much would it cost? And the answer may be, whoa, the boss ain't going to wear that, so I'll just wait for 3 hours at the airport. Or, okay, it's in the bounds of the possible. And then is receipt available on the flight I want to take? Those 3 things are all being roboticized because you don't need to call somebody to answer those questions. When you do that, you can lift a lot of cost out of the travel agency model because they're not employing people to answer the phone to answer questions a robotic could answer. You're getting better customer service, and you're doing it all through mobile apps, empowering the consumer, in the place and the time they wish to be empowered.
Excellent. So a lot of talk we had earlier when we spoke with Amadeus is about in the past year there's been a real increase in private channel deals where the airlines make a deal with a travel management.
There's been 2.
Well, there have been very big clients, British Airways.
Yeah, that's 2.
Well,
2 out of 450.
Well, do you think that that is a model of them trying to pick winners and losers among travel agencies?
I think it's a model of the airlines getting ahead of their skis on how good or bad their APIs really were, and having to do a contingent, plan to sort of solve the fact that actually their APIs were not fit for purpose.
Well, how long? So
they'll get fit, but they weren't fit for purpose when they went live.
So when airlines sort of say, okay, that Amadeus, Travelport, and Sabre have tended to be a bit complacent, and they understand there's this whole history where airlines throughout your career, they've tried taking their content out, and then they end up putting it back in, and they want to cut different deals. But that things are different now. In the past 5 years, the large airline groups have become profitable. Technology has improved in a lot of ways, and there is this big data opportunity. Sometimes you only learn by actually getting in there and trying to do it yourself. It seems like with Lufthansa being able to move 10% of its content over the course of only 2 years out of the Amadeus Travelport channel in Europe and move it into their direct channel, they seem very committed to not wanting to build their own tech and having confidence that it's going to work. Why do you feel like this time is not different, that it's the same as before?
Well, I think if you were leveling a criticism at the GDSs was somehow, and I think you used the term dinosaur in your comments with Decius before, if we were not investing in enhanced capabilities, then it would be a fair criticism. But to give you an idea, we've invested $850 million in the last few years, in our technology. That's capital dollars before you take into account OPEX. We process 7 billion shops a day in our system at extremely fast, reliable rates with bookability. We're generating the highest ticket value for the airlines, higher than their network average because of the kind of customers.
When you talk about average airline value, but airlines say that what you are is basically a glorified ATM, and so whether it's a glorified bankomat or automated teller machine. So if they put €1,000 of value or €200 of value, they created the value. They are the business traveler customer flying the international ticket. That's their customer. And so if you're not going to bring down the costs and improve the quality of your service, they'll buy little mini ATMs through these little side deals. Starting this year, there's this one order initiative that the International Airlines Lobbying Group is putting together. They want to make a multi-year step to trying to get beyond new distribution and continue down this path. Do you feel like Travelport can sort of survive if it just loses like some top tier, if you lose like the large airline groups because they decide to go on their own, but you can still provide all these other services? Would that work out as a plan for you?
Well, that's not the plan. I mean, I think if you asked airlines who's been the most flexible, innovative, and putting their money where their mouth is in terms of helping them to change the model, they'd probably say Travelport. I met with the CEO of a major US carrier just 2 weeks ago, and he said to me, you know what, Gordon, we've got to the point now whereby we're ambivalent as to whether the booking comes from our direct channel or it comes from you, because we know you guys deliver higher value tickets. The price point we've got is pretty good. And I think Ed Bastian was at a Bernstein conference last week and said he thinks that this whole NDC API stuff is somewhat overhyped and will not change the distribution model. Now, that's Ed's view. It's not the same view everybody else has.
Someone at Alaska Airlines, a top executive on the most recent earnings call, said that they are disappointed at the transaction costs that they have to the distribution channel and continue to be frustrated with it. So there are different voices within some of these airlines about how to analyze these issues. It seems like when you think about Lufthansa Group, British Airways, Air France, KLM, American Airlines, these are major airlines with some more that likely to follow. Clearly, some minds here think that there is a path forward.
Yeah, and what we're doing is we are embracing the path forward with a number of them. We recently announced with Qantas, and in Australia, Qantas is even more dominant, than any of the US carriers are over here. So they're moving to what they're calling their new distribution platform. We were the first travel distribution platform who are connected into that because we're the first to be level 3 IATA NDC certified, and we are enabling Qantas to achieve its goals through our system. You've got to bear in mind, this is a cost of sale of about 2 to 4% on average for an airline.
For a booking ticket.
Right? So as a relative cost of sale for the value that comes through, it's pretty good. But if we were standing still, it would be legitimate to criticize us. We're not standing still. We've invested, hundreds of millions of dollars in rebuilding our platform, enabling API connectivity, enabling airlines to merchandise their content, put their offers out there, etc. What will change, and private channel is more example of this than anything else, the economic model will change. Because where you are right is the airlines don't like the fact they pay me 5, I keep 2, and I give him 3. And there are
3 being the agency.
3 being the travel agent. And there are some people out there, the more enlightened people, who know that model is going to change.
So the airlines might start paying agencies, or the economics is going to change, you think?
The economic flows will change.
Okay. This is a travel tech conference. You guys have been, as you mentioned earlier, with the robotics, you bought MTT, which is a major maker of mobile apps for airlines like EasyJet. You've partnered with companies like Mobicar, which offers artificial intelligence to try to give more relevant offers to people for ground transportation. As you're looking for investment in Travelport, what are key areas on technology?
Yeah, great question. I mean, in technology, we're investing heavily in the hybrid cloud. So we've selected Microsoft for that in the Azure cloud. And this isn't we plan to do it, we're doing it. So already our rich content and branding, our hotel images, descriptions, our fares caching is out in the cloud. We're investing in opening up our databases, so we're moving to MongoDB as our database. We're moving as part of the cloud already into Docker container storage, and we're using Kubernetes.
So it's a lot of the best practices that you'd expect in Silicon Valley.
Yeah, I mean, the latest, greatest, technology. And then to your point about mobile, we've got 200 people sitting in Dublin who design, build, and run, and we do this in the Amazon cloud, mobile apps for some of the biggest airlines in the world, which are multi-award winning, as well as for travel agencies, and enabling our travel agencies to take advantage of the mobile revolution. It gives a whole new vista to the kind of capabilities we can deliver, and that intimacy that through our technology they can create with their end user consumers.
There was a audience question, from the last panel about market share and the argument about how can global distribution systems and travel e-commerce platforms, how can they sort of back up in terms of market share relative to the big picture. Do you have anything to offer in that?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think Decius answered the question quite well. First of all, if you look at the big 3 GDSs, and none of us can really participate in China, right? Because we're kind of barred from doing that.
TravelSky is the provider.
TravelSky. So you have to part what's going on in China because we can't do it. The big 3 GDSs, from a revenue point of view, have grown in the last 3 years by 17%. So we're not quite, unicorn kind of growth, but 17% growth in 3 years as an industry is pretty good. Revenue market share, it actually shows a different picture than volume market share because of the way that some of us are transitioning to selling more car and hotel, more payments products, more mobile apps, in addition to standard air. And in air, airlines, generally speaking, are paying us more, at least in our case, because we can distribute their entire range of content.
So let's go to some audience questions. What blockchain projects are you working on?
Great question. We have a prototype we're working on with IBM at the moment in terms of enabling blockchain payments into hotels. It's quite interesting. If you look at a GDS P&R, in some ways, it's almost like a blockchain because we bring together different bits of content and then that becomes the key conduit. But it's not how payments have been made. So it's a natural extension to us to look at how we can use blockchain to enable the payment process coming through. But to do all of that, we've got to complete the move we're making into MongoDB and other elastic kind of databases to facilitate some of blockchain.
So your plan is to have a private blockchain for certain parts of the inventory or processes?
Yes.
So blockchain it's a very passionate topic for people. We have Skift Research is a subscription service that we have. We had a colleague who wrote a report on blockchain, and after he spent 6 weeks doing it, he quit and went to work for a blockchain startup. So it's a passion, and one of the things that you hear when you go to those conferences is that middlemen technology companies are the ones who are most vulnerable to the power of blockchain. Why are you feeling like you can co-opt it as opposed to be displaced by it?
Well, because it's like everything. You've got a chance of embracing change or trying to resist it, and our strategy is to embrace it. Somebody's got to work it out, and has got to have the connectivity between all the players that are involved in an itinerary, which is what customers buy through our platform. And why not us? Now we'd probably partner with somebody, but we've got huge experience in the payment space with eNet. We've got massive experience in the distribution and aggregating of content and managing integrated itineraries. So to me, this is a logical extension to what we do.
What do you think about some of the consumer-facing technologies? So Singapore Airlines, starting in May, has been distributing its content directly to Skyscanner, which is a price comparison site. They're using a vendor they're using an independent vendor to help them with some parts of it. But everything from the moment that the traveler clicks book for a ticket on Skyscanner, all that activity from the offer creation, the branding, the payments, the collecting is all happening in Singapore's system. There are other, Google is interested in trying to do this with various partners. Finnair is working with PK Fair, a Chinese provider. What do you make of these B2C connections that are happening with the consumer brands?
I think there's an inevitability about it. I mean, if I was an airline, I'd want to have the widest possible distribution in all the places that consumers look, and if that's Skyscanner and how to connect to Skyscanner, then I would do that too if I was an airline. But the point is that consumers look in multiple places and different places for different kind of trips and itineraries, from their corporate life to their personal life and whatever. And, again, some of what Singapore Airlines is doing in Skyscanner and on their website, we're doing for Singapore Airlines on their mobile app because we design, build and run that for them. So I don't think it's not a world whereby you're worried about one particular thing. People will do access multiple channels. We are a channel to high value customers.
Okay. One more audience question. Looking back on Travelport's experience by being owned by private equity, did you feel like the private equity group stifled your innovation, or?
That's a tricky one to answer. We certainly, under private equity, had more debt than I would like, and I've spent a lot of time getting us sorted out on that. I would tell you that at one point we had a big debt for equity swap in our company, and I was very concerned about that, to be quite honest with you. But I found that the guys who swapped their debt into equity were some of the best owners I've ever had, because they were completely aware of the fact and focused on the need to invest in technology. I became the CEO in 2012. We know that we've out-invested at least one of our competitors in distribution by a factor of 2 to 1. Since 2012.
Compared to Sabre and Amadeus, you've doubled down on distribution.
Not both, because one of them I can't tell where their investment have gone, because it's all mushed in together. The other one, thankfully, separates it out. So I've invested at a rate of 2 times, one of our major competitors, despite being private equity owned. And I think we've moved from, in some areas, a laggard, if I'm honest about it, into many areas now of leadership, and we're continuing to invest in the business.
Wonderful. Well, it's been a pleasure talking with you, Gordon. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you.